I'm NichBoy and welcome to Pocket for Wednesday, the 4th of May. May the Wednesday be with you. Today on the show, trademark Wastelands, heels, and early IMO. Doesn't make sense at the end of the episode. Alright, here's what's been making headlines. The creator of the Alien Wasteland has changed the name of his game after receiving a cease and desist letter from Wasteland 2 developer In Exile Entertainment. Alien Action, as it's now known, had been in development for nearly 2 years when In Exile approached solo developer DevDan to inform him he was infringing on their trademark of the word wasteland. Because of the game's obvious differences, DevDan argued against the concept that his game could be confused with In Exile's strategy game. However, after discussion through long emails, DevDan says he finally ended up receiving a cease and desist letter from In Exile's lawyer asking to either stop using Wasteland or prepare facing legal action. On In Exile's own forums, associate producer Thomas Beakers acknowledged that contact with DevDan had been made and that though the initial intention had been to find an amicable solution without involving lawyers, Beakers said the lawyers were brought into action because DevDan was only offering to change the game's name if we paid him for it. Asking to be paid for infringing on someone's rights is certainly a new one for us, so of course, we refused. VVV is no longer on the 3DS eShop. And also, I don't know if that's how you pronounce the name of that game. I've never had to. Is it V? Or 6 Vs? Is it double triple V? Is it 3 Ws? Just in like a weird font? I don't know! Nintendo pulled the indie classic from the store after homebrew enthusiasts discovered an exploit which allows them to boot one of several well-established system hacks. Homebrewing for video games is basically the process of unlocking a system's hardware, enabling it to run unofficial software. It's not always used for nefarious purposes, like stealing games, but it's clearly on Ninty's naughty list, as the game was removed from the shop almost immediately after the exploit became widely known. The game's creator Terry Kavanagh tweeted that the discovery of this exploit was unexpected, and he appears to be waiting for further information from Nintendo. There's no word on whether or not the game will return to the eShop. Warhammer 40k Dawn of War 3 is happening. Congratulations, Warhammer fans. You did it. Sega announced the latest installment in Relic Entertainment's real-time strategy series with one of the sexiest cinematic trailers of the year. It has been 7 years since Dawn of War 2, and even after all this time, it looks as though the Space Marines, Elder, and Orc haven't made any amends. And it's sad, because I feel like they would have a really progressive society if they just decided to work together. And although there is no release date for Dawn of War, there is one for Dishonored 2. Bethesda announced overnight that they would be premiering gameplay of the first-person action game at this year's E3, and it would launch worldwide on the 11th of November. And finally, there's an exciting update to Rock Band 4 for all you Portnoys, Ulrichses, and ladies and gentlemenses. The latest update includes support for double kick drum pedals, which I'm told by ladies and gentlemen in the room is about bloody time because that Dream Theater song has heaps of double kick in it. So there you have it. In a moment, Goose is on the loose, but first, it's Thing of the Day. It's time for Thing of the Day. Thing of the Day. Thing of the Day. Assuming it's his wife at some point. Nope. All right. In Rainbow Six Siege, Black Valerian pulled off a cross-map heal, allowing teammate I Love Tawombo to steal victory from the clutches of death and defeat.
Black, see if you can shoot me across the roof.
No, he doesn't have any
I'm crawling.
Get open, get open.
Oh my god, yes!
He's picking him up.
Yes!
Oh my god!
This was by far the kill!
Oh my god.
Thing of the Day. Thing of the Day. Assuming it's his wife at some point. Nope. All right. All right, I'm joined now by Goose to discuss your IMO from last night. Welcome.
Thank you.
Run me down your opinion from yesterday's Good Game.
So the IMO was about early access, and in my opinion, I think early access is probably doing more harm than good. What it's done is this model has sort of opened the floodgates for a lot of games to sit perpetually in early access limbo and never reach their full potential, never finish off all their features, and it's just sort of a cash grab versus reaching a final finished game, and that's upsetting for me.
Interesting. So, as always, that's upsetting for me. There are people who agreed and people who disagreed with you. I'll start off with someone on your side to ease you in.
Thank you.
To make you feel comfortable here before we get to the tough stuff. Bone Picking wrote in and said, I won't eat a half-baked pie. I won't play a half-baked game. Give me a final product.
I agree.
Yep. And what about the pie bit?
I've been known to not fully cook my pies, but that's just out of laziness.
Disgusting. But then someone who disagreed with you and Bone Picking.
Let's have it.
Joseph Stott, who says, if it's playable and still good while they add features, what is the problem? There are people with hundreds of hours in Ark Survival Evolved. If that's not getting your money's worth, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a case-by-case scenario. And something like Ark Survival Evolved, I think, was a fairly finished game. There was a lot of features. It was a feature-rich game.
It was a poop-eating rich game as well.
Yes, there was that. But there were still things that were missing. Look, I will say I'm guilty of, not so much guilty, but I played early access games and got a lot out of them. The big example I mentioned on the show was DayZ. Another one is Reign of Kings. I had a lot of fun with that, and I've actually jumped back. Doing research for this piece, I got back into Reign of Kings and spent a lot of time in there again.
You've been playing Reign of Kings, and I've been hearing so many stories and seeing videos and screenshots and stuff. And then when I heard you were doing it because of this IMO, and your opinion was that early access is kind of killing the industry, I'm like, but you're having so much fun in a game right now that's in early access.
And I have stopped. Because
that doesn't invalidate the fun.
Because I got
Gossip.
about a day and a half's fun out of that game before it hit the end of what I could do with that game anymore.
You got a day and a half's fun out of that game after getting weeks of fun out of the game in an even earlier version.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I guess in this case of Reign of Kings, that is a game that, while it's still in early access, I would say from the beginning, from the outset, that was a feature-rich game as well, that had reached a lot of its sort of potential. All the promises made by the developers were there in the game. Some were a little buggy, but they were all there. And there was a complete game that I could have, as you mentioned, a lot of fun with. What I'm sort of pointing the finger at is a lot of games that come out and they're promising the world, and there's nothing, or there's very little there from the beginning, and they're still charging a price, and they're still trying to get people's money for those.
Can I offer a bit of a counter to that?
Sure.
In that, I think that early access, I feel like you don't like the sort of trend of these survival games because there's a sort of flood of them. You use these as you wave that flag of these aren't good in early access. Do those games ever really get finished? Do they? If you can buy something that works enough, then you're actually just getting bonus stuff the whole time. Is there ever a 100% version of DayZ?
I think, specifically that model of sort of open world survival does lend itself to a not having to be completed because there's always features coming and you can't really finish the game by playing it, so why should they finish the game in development? There should always be something there to come back to. And I think we saw from the early days of something like Minecraft, which set this up, it was constantly adding things, and as they added more things, there were more things to do in the game. So, look, that does make sense, but at the same time, there's a level of quality control, but there's also a level of sort of potential that the developer is promising, because games like DayZ, for example, Dean Hall originally just kept promising the world. Like, there was so many things he was going to add to this game. It was really inspiring, but the longer it dragged on, the more we saw that these ambitions for the game were actually causing some of the core mechanics at the beginning not even to be completed. So he was sort of way ahead of where he should have been in that game development process. Another game like The Forest, that game comes out, it's, you know, a good looking game with some great survival mechanics, but there's literally a book in that game that you open up and it says, here are structures you can't build yet. That we're going to add as we go on. And things like that just really rub me the wrong way, because that's showing you what I could be doing with this game. That's showing me the potential, but not letting me play it.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like at that point, maybe it's a mindset of the developer when you go into early access, which is now that I'm in early access, I never need to actually put 100% of my confidence and weight behind one product.
Yeah.
You can't go, here's all the fruition of my hard work. You can go, here's a bit, and there's going to be more. So the mindset changes to, people are having fun with this, so I don't necessarily need to prove myself.
Yeah.
As much as I would have if they didn't like it from the beginning. Yeah.
And I think you lose an urgency there, you lose deadlines, you lose the crunch, which, a lot of people will say is very full on in the games industry, but it does get games made.
It's a moment where there's a rallying behind the product.
Yeah, versus this kind of sort of wading into the shallow waters of early access.
Well, Jack Murray does somewhat agree with you. He says, when I absolutely agree that early access can be a mixed bag, but when it's done well, it can be done oh so very well indeed. And I think those cases are of immense value to the industry and to us as gamers. Where the company is open and honest about flaws and progress and updates, the relationship stays positive and constructive. Many early access games ignore this to their detriment.
Yeah, to that I would say it does come down, a lot of it is transparency, and so it is the developer showing their audience the process, and so you can understand more of what's happening and why some features might not be in the game. It comes down to as well, I think, pedigree. It's the developing team behind that game. So you've got examples of games that have gone through early access and reached fruition. So games like Crypt of the Necrodancer, as a Prison Architect.
Yes, yeah, and they did a great job actually.
Yeah.
I played a bit of Prison Architect, but I watched way more Prison Architect blog dev diary things than I did play the game.
You can make it a journey as you get to that finished game.
It was kind of like a bonus feature on a DVD, where you see behind the scenes of how this thing is being developed all the time.
But those games came out, they reached gold, they finished what they promised, and they got there. And I think that comes down to the team they had, their ambition, scaling back what they could do and what they couldn't do. So I think there's a lot more self-control as a developer if you are going to go through that early access model that you need to have.
Yeah.
Otherwise, things can spiral very quickly out of control. Dean Hall, I'm talking to you.
It's almost one of those things where you go, it could potentially be harder to go down this route. Even though it seems easier because you're getting money earlier, you actually need to hold yourself to something of a higher standard than someone going, here's everything this is the best thing I could make. Sure, it might not be worth your money, but at least it's out and done. Whereas here I'm going, you're investing in me as an idea. You're investing into my brain.
Someone made a good comment, and I apologize that I can't remember who tweeted or wrote it, but they
about
did.
pie?
It wasn't about pie, but they did actually just say it's like finishing anything. Or not finishing it and saying, when you're halfway through creating something you're really excited about, going, here, I want to show you. And you show your audience, or you show your teacher, or you show your friends. And as you're showing them, you're kind of like, I should have waited till I finished that.
Yeah.
Because as they're watching it or playing it, you're kind of like, oh, that'll be finished. That's
different
not done
here.
yet.
Yeah, totally.
I do it here with like work that we hand in. I'm like, oh, check it out, guys. I'm like, I should just wait until I finish that altogether. And
Because we're just we're over your shoulder going, oh, do you reckon that image should be a little bit bigger? And you're like, no, it's gonna be like that.
Realize,
Shut up.
I should not have shown anyone. I should have just done this by myself. I'm not sure if that's how developers feel, but I'd be interested to find out.
Yes, and so we've got, here's an interesting take, a couple of interesting takes actually on early access. The first one from Micah Edmonds, who says, I think early access should be, at its core, a way to road test risky mechanics or strange ideas that players may not be familiar with in order to test them. And Llewellyn also agrees and says, demos! All capital letters. But in my opinion, early access favors games that involve experimental, complex mechanics that to operate that a few can really do.
Yeah, actually that's a really good point, because games like the survival genre were kind of born out of early access.
Yeah.
And that's something that probably wouldn't have existed without it.
Yeah, because I think that game needed people to like it to push the developer to go, oh, people like it, so I'll continue, rather than investing a huge amount of money in
Which
hoping.
is experimental gaming at its core.
Yeah.
It's sort of, you test the waters and see what your audience likes and what they don't like. And in that case, I do think that there is a place. I'm not saying that early access shouldn't exist.
Because I think that's what we're here.
No, this is the thing. I feel like those scenarios, that's great. If you've got great developers who have great ideas, if you've got people who have new ideas, that it has its place.
I mean, something like you mentioned before, Crypt of the Necrodancer, being a great example of going, it's a roguelike dungeon crawler, but it's a rhythm game as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if people
How
are going to
many
like
publishers
this.
are going to go, yeah, cool, I'll take that. They'll be like, no, I don't trust that.
And also, and also, I guess with this, that you're going, not only is it a risk if people like it, but there's also a process of going through sort of a huge amount of group testing, going, okay, I have this strange idea, it doesn't quite work yet. but I can get it to work if I have enough people playing it and giving feedback and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think early access definitely has a place there, as long as you know when to stop asking for user feedback, because you need to stick to your guns at the same time if you've got this great new strange idea.
Well, I feel like some people brought up some really good points here. And I think the last thing I would probably add to that is the idea that early access, we always need to vote with our wallets for everything here.
Yeah.
But a great thing that came after early access, particularly that so much of this happens on the PC, is Steam refunds.
Exactly.
And to go, you can go, okay, I want to I'm going to spend $15 and see this unfinished game. Let's go in and take a look. If you feel unsatisfied with that experience, you can now get a refund for it.
Because there are some very unsatisfying experiences.
I'm looking at you, Bear Simulator by FarJ.com, because...
Blast Simulator, I believe?
Pretty much all the simulators except for like 3 of them. By getting refunds or by not buying games in the first place, you are sending a message of the kind of early access that you want. And I think it's about going, what kind of early access games do we want? Because I find a lot of enjoyment out of them, but I realize, and thanks to like Micah and Llewell in particularly, I realize that a lot of the games in early access I like are ones where I go, oh, I don't have this experience anywhere else. Yeah. I'm not just funding another shooter. What I'm funding is some weird idea that gives me a new way to play a game. And
the idea there is, if that idea takes off, that can become a new genre, that can become a new form of game that you'll be seeing in other developers working on the same kind of stuff. And that's always a great way to get something out there you really like.
And also, you should finish baking your pies. All right, that's it for the IMO talk through. Guys, I'm not going to ask you to let us know in the comments about what you think about this, because we've talked it to death. Instead, today is International Star Wars Day, which you're very excited about, and Pete's very excited. Look at it. Look at that little cheeky behind the camera smile.
May the fourth be with you.
All right. Let us know in the comments your favorite Star Wars quote, but somehow tie it into Pocket, just to really keep these egos floating. And while you're on the internet, check out Good Game on Facebook, YouTube, and iView. Want to meet fellow Pocketeers? Then join the Pocketeers Facebook group and Steam group and talk about all those early access games you got burned by. You can follow Good Game on Twitter at Good Game TV, follow Pocket at NichBoy, at Pierreth, at GG, at Monkey, and at Samgi. He's at Goosebangus, the Not Pie Cookers, and there are links to everything I just said in the description below. Today's Thing of the Day graphic was made by Jonathan Bug, Monsieur Bug's second submission. If you've made a thing, please send it in. Till tomorrow, NichBoy out.
Goose out. What's your favorite Star Wars quote?
Bum ba ba bum ba ba bum bum ba 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 ba. Is that the right music?
Yeah, close enough. All right.
With one foot.
Do it with one. You're not doing anything.
Yeah. Can't do it that quick.
Is it do the two hit 2 separate drums, or does it hit the same bass drum?
It's the same bass drum.
Right. Okay. What if you had 2 bass drums? So 2 pedals, just spread it wide.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm playing 2 bass drums and then the little drummer boy drum that's around my neck. Good times. Here at Room Pocket.